20 years lonely campaigning, but ever optimistic.
It's taken a while in coming, hasn't it? But we'll get there in the end.
Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. Real time, real life. But hang on, what followed wasn't Alan Bates at all, but this.
The problems with disclosure are capable of creating very significant pressures.
The inquiry chairman noting that the Post Office was still being so obstructive in failing to produce documents that the whole inquiry risked being adjourned. At lunch break, we caught up with the Post Office chief executive.
You're so slow at it that we're talking about derailing it today. That's appalling.
Well, I think as Sir Wynne said, we could slow down the process. It's extremely complex. We've done.
It may be complex. Don't you accept that is appalling conduct here and now?
We have no desire at all to do anything other than speed the process up so that justice is delivered.
I'm not asking about your desire. I'm saying, don't you regret that your organisation right now behaves like that? It's appalling.
You're suggesting that somehow it's some sort of cultural problem. It really isn't.
I'm not. I'm telling you what the inquiry heard.
We are trying to make sure that we deliver and disclose as many of the documents as we possibly can. 176 million documents we've been through.
Last year, the inquiry threatened the Post Office with criminal sanctions over its failure to supply documents promptly.
The whole truth.
And then to Mr. Bates. Jason Beer, KC for the inquiry, said he'd only been a sub-postmaster for a few years.
That's a relatively short period, isn't it?
It is. It is, but it's due to Post Office, not to myself.
Quite.
The comedy, black, the humour, gallows. Across the day, a detailed catalogue of a man begging the Post Office to see its computer system was dangerous, flawed, only to be sacked.
How did receiving this notice make you feel?
I felt they were going to make a lesson of my case because a number of other people knew what was going on at that time.
The Post Office saw documentation of the organisation upholding the final dismissal from his job of Alan Bates. Mr. Bates said this was a process which had happened entirely behind closed doors. It was described as outdated Stalinistic management designed to bludgeon its will onto the poor sub-postmaster. You had copious support from the Post Office. No, he said. They listened to you. No. They responded to you. No. They had a helpline. Useless. And they smeared him, calling Alan Bates unmanageable and unsuitable to be a sub-postmaster.
Was that ever put to you, that you were unsuitable to be a postmaster?
No, but they'd appointed me in the first instance.
The laughter died away because then, back in 2003, a warning from Alan Bates to the Post Office.
I can assure you of my continued and now increased resolve to bring the real facts of what is going on to those who will have no choice but to act, regardless of whether it takes years.
Civil Service documents then disclosed that the main reason the then Post Office Minister Ed Davey finally agreed to meet Alan Bates was because civil servants were worried that Channel 4 News was covering the issue, not because they wanted to act on Mr. Bates's behalf.
I was lied to, just like sub-postmasters were lied to, the courts and judges were lied to, ministers of all parties. So I really hope the inquiry holds people to account for their lies on an industrial scale.
This afternoon, this marathon inquiry, already 3 years old, landed something of a bombshell. How the Post Office managed to leave a paper trail about the importance of not leaving a paper trail. It's set out in an email to Post Office Chief Lawyer Susan Crichton in 2013. The risk of notification is that it would look bad for Post Office Limited if it ever became public knowledge that Post Office Limited has notified its insurer. In January, this programme first broke the story of how the Post Office did, in fact, contact its insurer because it was so concerned about its Horizon computer system. And the legal advice? A cover-up. It is recommended that rather than sending a formal written notification, Post Office lawyer speaks to its insurers and verbally notifies them so as not to leave a paper trail. Andrew Parsons, senior partner, Womble Bond Dickinson, wrote that. As Alan Bates left the inquiry, another warning. If you don't prosecute these people, we will.
Whether it's undertaken by the authorities themselves or whether we as a group have to bring some if the authorities fail us once again, we'll have to wait and see.
The inquiry continues in central London tomorrow.
Alex Thompson with that report. Well, I'm joined now by Labour MP Kevin Jones. He has long campaigned for justice for the victims of the post office scandal and is on the Horizon Compensation Advisory Board. Thank you very much for coming on the programme again, Kevin Jones. What did you make of today's hearing then?
Well, I mean, it showed the tenacity of Alan Bates. Someday I think it's a great privilege to know it's him and his campaigners have finally got to where we are to hear the truth. But what it's outlined again is the culture at the post office is completely rotten. And the idea that Nick Reed is still in place, I find remarkable. The idea that the Sir Win Williams's inquiry is having to drag screaming and kicking documents out of the post office still is completely unacceptable.
It is unacceptable and frankly astonishing given the kind of public profile of this whole scandal. How do you explain it?
Well, it is. Well, I think I've been involved with this campaign for many years, and it doesn't surprise me, the arrogance, I think, which Alan referred to, of the post office. It's there still today. Nick Reed's got to go, and some of the senior management have got to go. Without that and a change of commitment to really change and cooperate with the inquiry, then I think things will be held up still again. But I think fair to Sir Win Williams, he's very clear he's going to get to the truth. I mean,
Nick Reed did say that they would cooperate, and yet the documents that are needed in order to kind of achieve some degree of justice here, especially criminal justice, they're still not forthcoming. So what should happen next?
Well, action speaks louder than words. It can say that, but they're weasel words. The facts of the matter is that the documents exist. They need to be provided to the inquiry. And as Alan's quite rightly said, what we ultimately need to do, because this is not about mistakes, this is about cover-up, conspiracy and downright lies. And if we're going to get justice for individuals, they're going to have to ensure that we find some of these people in court to answer for what they've done.
I mean, we've had public inquiries about other scandals in the past that did not result in criminal charges. Is this one actually going to be any different?
Well, it's got to. I'm sorry. I mean, I think myself and certainly James are both not others. And I think there's enough evidence out there now to show that some people not only knew the facts, but covered them up. And also in 2017, remember, spent £100 million of taxpayers' money defending a case which they knew they had no case to defend.
I mean, James Arbuthnot, when he was showed the secret tape recordings that we broadcast and Alex Thompson's pieces a few weeks ago, James said, to think that a British institution owned by us could behave like this is just terrible. It is an extraordinary thing, isn't it, that we've got to this stage?
Well, it is. And over the years, James and I have actually questioned ourselves sometimes, thinking, is this really true? Can be true? And it has been true. That's been a remarkable thing about it. But remember that it's quite evident now from the tapes that you've uncovered. They knew in 2013. They continued to prosecute people, send people to prison, and also then spend £100 million of taxpayer money to try and cover this up. And that's just remarkable.
Okay, so finally, how confident are you that there will actually be criminal charges levelled against those people who are responsible for hounding hundreds of sub-postmasters over the years?
Well, I'm determined that there are. And I think, some people at the moment are hiding behind Sir Win's inquiry. I think the police should now be looking at some of the evidence that you've produced, others, because there's clear conspiracy here. This is not people making genuine mistakes.
So this is an appeal to the police to say, get on with it?
Well, I would, because there's enough evidence now that's come out, and obviously more will come out at the public inquiry. But we couldn't just hide behind that, because ultimately people like Tom Brown, my constituent who came first to see me and got me involved in this, who've sadly passed away before Christmas, he wants justice. His justice, he wants people held to account.
Kevin Jones, thank you very much indeed.